Getting a balanced mix can be one of the most frustrating parts of music production, and when I look on YouTube, there are so many videos that seem to focus on things that, in my opinion, aren't that important. Sure, there's a time for complex dynamic EQ and multi-band sidechain compression, but that's like the last 4 or 5% of a quality mix. What about the other 95%? AKA, the bit that really matters. So I wanted to see if there was a way to get a really solid mix in just a few minutes. And to challenge myself, I asked one of our accelerator students to send me a track he's been working on but hasn't mixed yet. And to test these techniques, I wanted to see if I could get a balanced mix in just 5 minutes. That was the plan, but let's see what actually happened. Before we start though, I want you to imagine two teams in a race, Team A and Team B, and the race is from London to Paris. Team A's journey looks like this, whereas Team B's journey looked like this. So what was the difference? Well, Team B wasn't told that the finish line was in Paris. My point, if you don't know where you're headed, how do you know when you get there? So step one was we needed to have a goal, and there are two main aspects to mixing: volume and frequency. For volume, we wanted to end up having the master channel peak at roughly -6 dB. This would give us plenty of headroom for the mastering stage and make sure that we never run into clipping issues. And that's when the levels go above 0 dB and you get things like unwanted distortion, a bad sound. Now, -6 dB is just a rough guide and you don't need to obsess about it, but it's going to make something I'm going to show you in a couple of minutes make way more sense. So that was our map for volume. How do we get a map for frequency? Well, the simplest way is use a reference track in the same genre you're producing in as a guide. Now, I wanted to use one as close as possible to the style of Gustav's track to make sure that we were comparing apples to apples, or in this case, melodic house to melodic house. After listening to a few tracks on Spotify in the melodic house genre, I settled on one by Sultan and Shepard. I then went over to Beatport, downloaded it, and then brought it into Ableton, making sure I warped it to be in sync with my project. Now this is important so you can loop it easily and sync it up with the track you're mixing. Then I stuck a spectrum analyzer on it so we can use it to compare our frequency spread, and routed the output to be external out so it wasn't going to influence our master channel, which is where our mix will be going. Now the important next step I did was bring down the volume of the reference track by 12 decibels, and this is because the reference track has already been compressed and limited. So if we try and mix to that at full volume, we are definitely going to run into a lot of clipping issues on the master channel. Thankfully, I already knew this so we could avoid it straight away. The last part was setting up another spectrum analyzer on our master channel so we could open both up side by side to compare our mix to our reference track. If you're using Ableton, you want to go into preferences and hit show multiple plugin windows to allow this to happen. Top tip there. Okay, great, so we were ready to roll, and then I deleted everything that Gustav had done. I pulled every single fader down to 0. This meant I could start from the ground up with a solid foundation. And this is where I started my timer. Let's do it, get straight into the mix. Get my headphones on. So first step was quick and easy. What's the most important part of a dance music track? The kick. I anchored this to -12 dB and left it alone. Now remember I mentioned our volume target was -6 on the master channel? Well, what I found is by anchoring your kick to -12 dB, if you create a good mix around that, you should end up peaking at about -6 decibels when everything else is playing. Okay, now the bass. I've got a high bass and a sub bass. I'm gonna bring these both up. Oh, what I'm gonna do is, as well on the main channel, I'm gonna put a mono switch for the keyboard shortcut so I can mix in mono. Gonna make things easier. I've put one on my reference track as well. So that bass is sounding pretty good. They're already pumping with sidechain. If they weren't, then I could group them together and then put a sidechain compressor over the whole bass bus, which is going to help it duck in time with the kick. That's sounding pretty good. Next thing I want to do is check that reference spread against our reference track. So what I'm going to do is put an EQ on there. I'm going to take out all of the frequencies before that spectrum analyzer. Let's take out everything above 120 Hertz. And now I'm going to check that against our reference track with the same roll off. So let's just copy and paste that. And then I'm going to open up the two spectrum analyzers next to each other. Quick, quick, quick. Got to go fast, Will. Span. And then I can switch between the two and have a listen and have a look and just get the energy levels about right. This is the most important bit really of the whole thing. Okay, we're lacking a bit of power there. So that's good to know, because now we can bring our bass up a bit until it looks a bit more like the reference. I think the low bass. Not bad. That's really where referencing comes in useful. It actually looks like we're missing a little bit of low end here because this is lower than here. So what I'm going to do is put a drum bus on our sub bass channel. And I'm just going to add this boom function. Let's turn off all this. And then we'll find the sweet spot. Okay, now I'm going to turn off the filters on both our master channel and the reference track. And the next thing we want to do is bring up the clap, the main clap or snare, so it sounds similar to the level of our reference track. And we just need to make it sound good against our kick and bass. Now, remember, it's all the claps together. So if you've got multiple claps, you have to make sure they all sound good when they're all combined. And then once you've got them all balanced nicely, you can group them into a clap channel and then control the whole thing up and down if you want. That's sounding pretty good to me. Next is a case of bringing up the main open hat. That's the next most important thing in the mix, and we just need to make sure it sounds good with the kicks, the clap and the bass. That's my top-down mixing approach. Cool. Now let's bring up all the other instruments in the drum section. All the percussion. Sounding pretty good in stereo. Good enough for the moment. Now, this is an important part. After doing your drums and your kick and your bass, or rather the kick, the bass, then the drums, we need to do the most important part of the track, which is going to be the lead vocal in this case, but it might be a synth if you're doing a synth-based track. So let's bring up some of these vocals. Doing it in mono makes life easier. Let's see if we've got vocals. So we're always just going one step at a time. Backing vocals. It helps that Gustav's made a really nice track anyway. And there's a lot of tracks in this. You just need to make sure nothing's fighting with the lead vocals. And that's sounding pretty good. Okay, let's do a quick time check. Okay, next thing, main leads. Don't panic, Will. Stay cool, bro. Lead synths. That would be that meow. This one. All of this other stuff is just backing. Let's do a quick frequency check. Main. Let's go to the reference track. Oh, looking pretty good. Levels are getting up there. Nice, I'm liking it so far. Let's just bring in these other elements first. Alright, this only has to work around everything else. We don't want it fighting. He's so low in the mix. This is just strings. Okay, it's nice, but it's missing something. Reverb and stuff like that. Yes, we've got reverb baked into some of these stems already, but Gustav has kindly stemmed out the auxiliary channels as well. So now let's just add this extra gel on its own. Nice, he's taking my room reverb to heart. Now the bigger reverbs. This is where we can start doing it in stereo. Extra sizzle. Let's do a quick check. Nice. Pause. Okay, at this point I was pretty happy, but there was a little bit of mud. So let's get back and see what I had to do to create that change. Let's just clean this mix up. The way we can do that is really just add a low cut filter to everything that's not the kick and the bass. That's just going to allow more space in the low end for our kick and bass. I'm just going to cut everything at 120 hertz. Boom. I know it's sloppy. I'm going to have to do this on every single channel. Let's fast forward this bit then. Let's put all those vocals together and do it quickly. Vox. There we go. We're going to take everything out over 100. For a male vocal, you might make it 80. All the instrumental, group those together. Get out everything under 120. It's a bit high, I think. 100's better, because we've got this fundamental here. Now, at this point, I was definitely happy, but it was lacking something. It was just lacking that sheen. And the last thing I did, just gel everything together. So let's have a look. I think we need to make this lead synth bigger. More reverb. Going to create an auxiliary channel. Then we can be pretty judicious with the other stuff like reverb, but on an auxiliary channel so we can create space by using that as its own separate instrument. Let's feed some of this out. With everything else. Last thing I want to do is going to duck the main lead synth against the vocals because they're fighting a little bit. This is a common thing to do as well. So we're going to put a compressor there, open up the sidechain mode, take the input from the vocals, just take it from the lead vocals. Just a little bit. Just so the lead vocals take priority over the lead synth. That was quick. We did it. Oh, no, we didn't do it. Okay, but we did it in like 1.5 minutes longer. So to have a quick recap, we went from this. It helps that Gustav, aka Tempest, is an amazing producer. So this is the original. But now let's listen to the rebalanced version. Original. A little bit lacking in the lows. A little bit warmer and deeper in the lows. But it's a close one because, as I said, Gustav is already a great producer. I just wanted to see if I could rebalance the mix, get it warmed up in just a few minutes. Now this difference will be a lot more noticeable if you struggle with mixing. So let's quickly recap those steps we've just been through. 1. Pick a reference track, bring it into Ableton or whichever DAW you're using, sync it up to your project so you can reference it. Then take the volume of the reference track down by 12 decibels and stick a spectrum analyzer and the output not going to your master channel. Then on the master channel, put another spectrum analyzer so you can compare your reference track frequency spread to your track. Then anchor your kick to -12 dB and leave it there. Bring up the bass line and get that balanced with the kick. Remember, you can use the frequency roll-off to check your frequency spread against your reference track, and remember to use your ears and try and get a similar energy level. Also trying to hit about the same level on each spectrum analyzer. Then bring up your main clap or snare until it works with your kick and bass, then all your other drums, and then your lead synth or lead vocal depending on what kind of track you're making. After that, it's a case of bringing every other instrument up in order of importance, making sure they don't mess up what you've already done. Now Gustav had already done a good job of taking out the low end of a lot of instruments, but the chances are you're going to be having to cut out most things underneath about 100 or 120 Hz, apart from the kick and bass, of course. Finally, don't forget to add room reverb to most of the elements, especially the drums, to gel everything together. And if you've got anything fighting in the lead synths or lead vocals, you can sidechain compress the one that's least important against the main one. In this instance, it was the vocals, sidechain ducking the lead synth. Now remember, that isn't a finished mix, but it's pretty well balanced if you ask me for the little time it took to do it. The thing is, after teaching literally thousands of students, I know there are 8 things that you're probably doing that even if you followed every step of this video, they would ruin your chances of a decent mix. Pretty much rendering everything we've just covered completely useless. Now making even just one of these 8 mistakes could throw your mix off, so I put them together in this video here so you can avoid the mistakes that I've made in the past. Now even experienced producers make at least 3 of these and it always throws their mixes off, so I recommend checking them out. Before you do though, if you enjoyed this video, please hit like, subscribe if you enjoyed it, and I'll catch you over at that next video.